And then also on Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما يزال البلاء بالمؤمن والمؤمنة في نفسه وولده حتى يلقى الله تعالى وما عليه خطيئة. رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. That a mu'min and a mu'mina will continually be tried in themselves, in their children, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they have no sin upon them anymore. We discussed this previously as well. So we said that any type of hardship in the dunya, if you're patient with it, all these hadith, by the way, of not getting angry means being patient to the point of holding your anger back. That's why it's under the chapter of patience. So in this hadith, the Prophet is telling us that every hardship that comes to you, any believer, believing man or believing woman, right, like we mentioned before, any hardship that comes and you're patient with that, you will continually be tried until like Allah's wiping away all your sins, right? So fi nafsihi, anytime you're angry and you hold that anger back, you're patient. Anytime you're depressed, and you're patient, you have anxiety, you feel sick, you get hurt, you have to go through operation, you experience a loss of a family member or a loss of a close friend. All these things, all these tests are expiation of sins for you until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have no sins left. Right? This is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes, like I said previously, you might have a place in Jannah that's very, very high and you cannot reach it with your actions alone. So Allah gives you tests and tribulations and hardships so that you may attain this high level. Right? And that's from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His love for us. So I think we'll stop here inshallah. So that was hadith number 49. Any comments or questions or? Yes.
So when you say get angry for the sake of Allah, there's obviously certain steps that you need to take. You can't just go crazy and
yes. Exactly. So the brother is asking for clarification on when we say getting angry for the sake of Allah, is there certain steps that you should take? Obviously, yes. Like even the Prophet ﷺ, he told us there's certain stages. Some people not misinterpret, but maybe misunderstand the hadith, like من رأى منكم منكرا فيغير بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. Right? That if any of you see an evil, they should change it with their hand. If they're not able to do so, they should change it with their tongue. If they're not able to do so, then they should change it or hate it in their heart. And that's the weakest of faith. Right? The scholars in the explanation of this hadith say that it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in that order. Right? So we can't go, like stop out 7-Eleven here and start throwing away all the pork products and saying this is haram, right, with our hands, or taking all the cigarettes or the gambling lotto or whatever, right, destroying it. No, because you don't have the authority or the capability or the strength to do so, right? So the scholars require if you want to change an evil with your hand, removing it, you have to have the authority. First, you have to have the hikmah, the knowledge to know that this is haram, right? It is the evil. It is a munkar, first of all. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا, right? Second of all, you have to have the authority, right? You're in a position to actually forbid that evil. Third of all, you have to have the capability, right? And fourth of all, there should not be a greater evil that results from it. So the same thing with anger, like we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're following these guidelines. So in some situations, like with your children, you can, stop them from doing wrongs with your hands because you have the authority, right? If the person is a hakam, a governor, a judge, a ruler, an amir, a leader, he can use force to stop evil, right? Because he has the authority, he has the capability, etc., the wisdom, right? But if you're not at that level, then maybe with speech, telling people this is wrong, enjoying the good, forbidding the evil, right? And if that, for example, give you greater harm or cause harm to your family or to your community, then hating it in your heart. Right? So there's different levels, and that's from the hikmah of the Prophet ﷺ. There's this famous story of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala walking through the streets with his students, and the Mongols were getting drunk, and the students were like, aren't you going to forbid the evil to their shaykh? And he said, no, because they're getting drunk, they're just being occupied by themselves. But if they were to be sober, they will spill the blood of the Muslims, right? Because they were killing a lot of Muslims. So leave them be, It's better that they do that to prevent a greater evil. So that's the hikmah of the scholar. Sometimes it's not the appropriate time or the appropriate place to forbid an evil. Or, some people take certain actions and it ends up, destroying a community, for example, and causing a far greater harm. So anytime when you want to get angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, consider how you're going to do it. Also consider the khuluq of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How did he change evil? How did he address evil? You want to do it in the best of manners, right? And the main point of that is to you're doing something, you're giving advice, you're encouraging the good, you're freeing the evil, always doing it for the sake of Allah, right? I'm angry not because of my nafs. Some people, even when they're giving da'wah, it might start off as a sincere advice, right, for the sake of Allah. But then they're getting their nafs involved. They start getting angry, and the shaitan comes to them. Now it's not an issue of I'm trying to give da'wah for the sake of Allah, or I'm arguing for the sake of Allah, or I'm trying to correct an evil for the sake of Allah. But it becomes this person's not listening to me. Who do they think he is? I give you the little brother, and then you start getting angry and angry and angry, and then you forget you're supposed to be doing it for the sake of Allah, not for yourself, right? So always our goal as Muslims is that we want to do an action solely for the sake of Allah, so we know that our niyyah is pure, right? Even making dua for that person sometimes, if they're doing wrong, before approaching them, right? So you're trying to do it sincerely for the sake of Allah, not just try to do it for yourself. Because some people, they get on that, kind of authoritarian trip that they think that they can boss other people around. They're using the deen because they want to build their own self-esteem or their own self-worth. But that's not why we do it. We do it because we love Allah and we hate those things that are displeasing to Allah, right? Then, subhanAllah, some of the greatest scholars, they would say that I wish that my words can be out and my teachings out without knowing who did it, right? And some of them would say that I would wish that I would lose in the debate so I can learn something new, right? Not, I want to win the debates to show off and be like the better debater. No, because he's trying to sincerely advise or learn for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, yes. Yes. Not only there's some men like that too, subhanAllah, but yeah, I've noticed on I don't know, the sister is actually strengthening my theory that sometimes women, they hold on to anger or kind of a revenge more than, maybe a little bit more than brothers. And it's strange because women are actually softer and kinder in general, but I think when you rub them the wrong way and they cross that line, then subhanAllah, they hold on to it. So any of us, men and women, it applies to both, that when we have that situation, first of all, remember, Allah says, would you not like that Allah forgives you? Would you, we make so many mistakes towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't we want Allah to forgive us? How patient is Allah with us? He created us. He gave us our lives. He gave us our sustenance day after day after day after day, never asking for anything from us. And yet we use these gifts to sin against Him, to disobey Him. And He forgives us. So when somebody does something wrong to you, don't you want to forgive them? That you the same way that you like Allah to forgive you, right? Also, holding on to anger or resentment or revenge or hatred, like I said, I think Gandhi, you can take the hikmah from even non-Muslims, obviously. He said it's like swallowing the poison and hoping the other person is going to die, right? You're hurting yourself more. That person, he might have just completely forgot about the situation. He's moving on, and you're having all this time, energy spending on hating that person or wishing revenge for that person or not forgiving that person, and that person, he's forgotten about it. So you're just hurting yourself, basically, right? So the main thing is remembering also the mercy of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's our best example, how forgiving he was, even to the people that insulted him, fought against the da'wah, oppressed the Muslims, right? When they became Muslim, he forgave them, right? He didn't say, oh, you remember what you used to do to me? Remember you did this? Remember you did that? He forgave them. He gave them gifts, subhanAllah. So a mu'min is always forgiving in their characteristic. And the Prophet ﷺ, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Right? Always take the path of pardoning and forgiving and turning away from the ignorant ones. Right? Don't let yourself, if that person is, how can you say, like, worthy of being forgiven, that's a decent person overall, like that person, forgive them and you'll get the reward, right? If that person is a bad person, maybe not so worthy of your forgiveness or compassion, at the very least, forget about them. أَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Turn away from the ignorant ones. Don't waste your time. Spend your time and your effort on your own self, fixing yourself. Sometimes we, focus on the mistakes of others and we forget our own mistakes. Like we might see like a little speck on a person's sweater and our clothing is like covered in stains, right? We're so focused on that little speck, but we forget about cleaning our own clothing first, right? Work on ourselves more, inshallah, and you'll find as you work on yourself more and you think about your own faults, you'll be more forgiving to others. Just like you want Allah to forgive you, then you have more mercy upon others and you want to forgive them. And at the end of the day, also realize that Allah is watching everything. If the person truly did wrong to you, Allah will take care of them. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you'll have the choice, right? But in the dunya, move on to higher things. Focus your attention and your time on getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, memorizing the Quran, giving da'wah, helping others. There's so many things we can do. We don't have time to waste on people that are not worthy of our time to waste on. Wallahu a'lam. طيب. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.